Hello, my name's Sarah TW and I'm talking to you from Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust. I'm actually sat in my garden at the moment next to my garden pond because I thought I'd tell you a little bit about newts today. So there are three types of newts that occur in Britain that are native, which is the smooth newt or common newt, and as the name suggests it is the most common. There's the palmate newt and the great crested newt. The newts that I've got in my pond here are the smooth newts, are the most common one. They are about 10 centimetres long in length, so a good way to identify them is by their size. But the tricky thing is that the palmate newt is about the same sort of size as well. The difference between them is that the smooth newt has actually got spots underneath its throat. Both species have orange underbellies. And like I say, they are about the same size. The great crested newt's a little bit easier to tell apart from those two because it's almost twice the size, about 17 to 18 centimetres long. I'm just keeping an eye in the pond now because if I see a newt come up, I'll see if we can catch it on the film. So newts are amphibious, which means that they live in the water and on land. They do have to come up to the surface to breathe air. It's currently the beginning of April, and this is a really good time to be looking in ponds for newts because they're really active at this time of year. So to give you an idea of the life cycle of the newts, around February time they start to emerge from their winter dwellings. So the adult newts actually come out of the water over winter to hide underneath logs and rocks, perhaps in long grass, in compost heaps, places like that. Occasionally they will stay in the water over winter, but the majority of them will come out. So I'm just going to show you around the edge of my pond. So I've got loads of rocks and things around the edges. It's a little bit messy around the edges, but that's not such a bad thing. One of the general rules about having a garden that's friendly for wildlife is that the messier the better in a way, because it gives wildlife a lot of places to hide. So this just here is a bit of a compost heap where, you know, the newts have only got to go across the path to get to there. So it's just a case of having things that are really close to the pond for them to access, and that's really good for them. So that's what they do over the winter, and then around the end of February, beginning of March time, they come and find the pond again. The newts will often come back to the same pond, and that's when they start to breed. So the males do quite an intricate dance for the females. They dance around the reeds. And it's quite entertaining to watch. I didn't see it this year, but I did see it last year in this pond, and it was quite. They sort of almost go vertical and do a bit of a wiggle in the water to the females who watch from not far away, and then the males actually release a packet of sperm. The females then take that on, and they do internal fertilisation with those with that sperm, which is a bit different to what toads and frogs do, because they do external fertilising of the eggs. So that's one of the differences between newts and frogs and toads. Once the female's done that, she'll then release the eggs, and they interestingly they wrap each egg up in a little leaf, which is quite cute, and then they'll eventually hatch. Now newts actually, when they hatch, they turn into what look like tadpoles, but the way that you can tell them apart a little bit later on is they develop their front legs before their back legs, whereas both frogs and toads both develop their back legs first. So that's one of the differences between the baby newts, which are actually called larvae. So they are in the larval stage. They also develop little frilly gills around sort of the back of their head, and that's what they use to breathe underwater, because they are fully aquatic at that stage. It's when they go through a metamorphosis stage and completely change into the adult form, which is when they become amphibious. So one of the tricks with seeing newts is remembering that a lot of their predators will come from above, and so if you make any fast movements above your pond, the newts will probably think you're there to eat them, and so they'll all swim down to hide. So if you are looking for them, it's good to come and sit next to your pond and try and keep reasonably still, and not make any fast movements. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to position the phone so it's ready to spot any that might come to the surface. And there was one there that just came up for air. So with the smooth newts that I've got in my pond, there's actually a little tiny baby down there as well. I don't know if you can see it. So that's a newt in its larval stage with its frilly headgear. There's a newt just coming up for air there. So that one was a male, and I can tell it's a male because it's got sort of a frilly crest down its back, and the females don't have that. Both the males and females have the orange underbellies, but only the males develop the frilly back at this time of year during the mating season. Say the newts come out of their hiding places, which they overwinter in. They don't fully hibernate over winter, but they do slow right down and eat barely anything. They'll come out on warmer days during the winter, but generally they'll stay in their hiding places. So under those rocks, in those logs, in all those messy parts of your garden that you really want to keep, and try and have areas in the winter where you don't disturb. So ones that newts are quite safe to stay in. I can just see a male underneath these plants here at the moment. I'm wondering if he'll come up for air shortly. So I'll try and keep the camera there for a bit. I can see a bit of action down here. There's a male just at the side there. I'm hoping that it's not just reflection that you can see on top of the water and that you can actually see the newts underneath. I promise you they are there. So as you can see in the pond, I've got loads of plants. I've got some reeds there, which are also great for dragonfly and damselflies. I've got a rock pile that goes all the way down to the bottom of the pond there in stacks with smaller rocks in between, so there's loads of crevices for them to get into. And I've also got shallower areas. So you might have seen Ben's video about the frogs in the pond, saying that it's really useful to have not only the messy edges but also the shallower areas, partly so that things can get out if they fall in. So small mammals like hedgehogs can get out of your ponds. That's really important, that things aren't going to drown if they fall in. Just see a male newt right over there that's sort of hovering around just below the surface of the water with his frilly back. There's loads of activity going on at the moment. So it's currently just gone 7 p.m. here in my garden on the 8th of April. So gives you an idea of the time of year that it is at the moment and time of day. They're quite active at this time. So there's a little female. Oh, I'd made her swim away then, sorry. She'll probably come up. So you'll see them constantly coming up for air. So if you just come and sit near a pond where you think there might be newt activity, and just keep watching, and you'll gradually see them start to come up for air. You'll notice that the babies don't do that. So when they're in their larval stage, like I said, they are aquatic at that point. So they've got their frilly gills behind their head that they use to breathe underwater. So the things that might predate on the newts, that might come to your garden. So herons are a big predator of newts, and frogs for that matter. So they might come to the edge of your pond. Fish, if you've got those in your pond, they'll eat the younger newts, and if they're bigger fish, they'll eat the adult ones as well. And they'll also eat the eggs. So if you want to have a wildlife pond, however lovely fish are, it is a good idea just to have it for wildlife. So rather than having sort of fancy fish, just have the wildlife come in instead, because the fish do eat a lot of things in your pond, and so they will limit the amount of wildlife that can survive. So there's a few newts down here. I'm hoping that they'll come up for water, for air soon. So if we just keep an eye, I'm just going to keep the phone there. Domestic cats can be a predator of newts as well, particularly when they come onto land. So over winter, when they leave the water to find their nesting places over the winter. I don't have frogs in this pond. I occasionally see frogs later in the year, but I don't have frogs spawn in this pond. It's not uncommon to have one without the other, so either newts without frogs or frogs without newts, and the same with toads. So the newts actually eat frog spawn, so newts are also predators themselves, as well as being predated on by other things. They do eat insects in the water, so when they come onto land in the winter, they'll eat small insects, they'll eat small flies and things like that they can find around, small slugs and snails as well. And when they're in the water, they'll eat aquatic insects, they'll eat small shrimps, so small crustaceans. We're just watching a little male down there at the moment. He's just flashed his orange underbelly at us. I hope you saw that. And there's a female swimming across towards that lily pod. She's just still at the moment. She's moving towards us again. Hopefully you can see her. She's just going towards that the big snail. There's a male just meeting her now underneath there as well. And there they come, following each other through the water. The male's just going the other way. Let's watch that female for a moment. So you see the female's not got the frilly crest on her back. It's only the male that's got that. So there are the newts in their larval stage in the pond at the moment. I saw one earlier, but I don't know if you could see it through the camera because it was quite far down. So the key things if you do want newts in your pond is ideally don't have fish, don't introduce goldfish and things like that into your pond, and koi carp, because they'll eat all the eggs and they'll eat the newts in their larval stage as well. And it's a really good idea to have lots of messy edges, lots of plants for them to hide in, have a really good variety of depth in the pond. So lots of messy edges, lots of places for them to overwinter in your garden as well, not too far away from your pond, so piles of rocks that aren't going to get disturbed in the winter, log piles, compost heaps, things like that. It's not just great for newts, that's great for lots of different types of wildlife, so really good things to do in your garden to encourage wildlife in general, not just newts. And don't dismay, if you don't have newts in your pond, it will be great for other wildlife. Not newts don't find every pond, but just remember that water is one of the greatest gifts that you can give to wildlife in your garden. So I built this pond a few years ago now, but within 48 hours of filling it with rainwater, I had 2 newts within it, and within days I had loads of aquatic life going on, so loads of crustaceans, loads of insects. I don't know how they found it. I know that a couple of the neighbours have got ponds, so they will have moved across quite easily. But I see lots of different creatures come and take drinks from the water. I see birds bathing in it, so it really is a great gift to wildlife. And my pond's a reasonable size, but even if you put a washing up bowl outside with a few stones so you know things can get out, and so you've got that variety and depth, it's still a brilliant gift to give to the wildlife, and you'll instantly see things using it. So you'll see a variety of life coming around. So I can see a male down there at the moment fiddling around with the reeds. He's sort of burying himself. So we'd love to hear what life you get in your pond as well, if you've got a pond, if you're lucky to have one in your garden, or perhaps what you've seen in other people's ponds, what you've seen in ponds in the local park. Yeah, so look out for the other videos that we're putting out at the moment, and I hope that you get a chance to enjoy the wildlife that you can see from your window. If you can get out into a green space, whether it's your garden, whether it's the local park, I hope you can enjoy that at the moment. Enjoy the spring, and we'll see you soon.